Youorns. Greetings, fellow Watford fans. Omar here, and it's time for the Youorns 10-minute take on Watford 2, Middlesbrough 3 at Vicarage Road on Saturday. And it was not a happy Saturday for the Hornets, who fell to defeat for the second consecutive time in the Championship, losing to Middlesbrough, a team who just simply cannot defend. They are not a good defensive team, and that had been known by Watford coming into this game. Watford coming off the back of a 3-0 defeat the previous weekend to Leeds United at Elland Road, where Watford looked outmatched and intimidated. And it seems now that it's obvious now that there's a troubling pattern to the way Watford have been playing over the last few weeks, starting the season very well with two performances that really have been some of the best we've seen from Watford in a number of seasons. The game against Queen's Park Rangers, where we dominated them for a half, and then the game against Plymouth, where we absolutely had a million chances but could not get past them in a 0-0 deadlock. And since then, Watford have really gone stumbling and stuttering through, and some of the bad habits that we were hoping to escape from this season have returned. And now what we're seeing is an imbalance in this side. Their approach is unbalanced. And even as we see Val Ismail trying to build an identity and putting out a stall for what he wants, in this particular game, things really became undone very early on. And in a game where you figured Watford would be able to hold Middlesbrough at bay, well, it turned out to be quite the opposite. Val Ismail's team found themselves down 2-0 in just over 10 minutes. 5 minutes in, they were already down a goal to nil. The previous season against the very same team at the Vic, Watford were down inside the first 4 minutes. So Watford did not do a good job of containing Middlesbrough in the game. Now, look, Watford's defense has now become a real issue. Now, it's been a liability for a number of seasons now. But what we are seeing this season is a complete lack of discipline. I think that's really where Watford broke down in this game against the Middlesbrough side, who dominated much of the first half. I thought Middlesbrough, who I thought passed the ball with some really good intent, attacked with some real intent, looked like they knew what they were doing out there in the first half. They absolutely, I think, controlled that first half. Watford, though, were nowhere to be seen, especially the first 20 minutes of the game. They looked lost. They looked uncertain. Their defense looked very, very vulnerable, as it has. And even though Ryan Porteous did do some standout work when he had to in this defense, and he's been pretty good in defense this season, considering everything, the Watford defense generally and the team approach to defending has not been good, especially over the last 5 games in which Watford have conceded 11 goals. They've also conceded in that stretch, in the last 2 games, 6 goals. That's more serious than what we'd seen over previous seasons. Watford, even when they were losing games last season, weren't conceding regularly 3 goals. They weren't doing that. This season, they're beginning to do that. The game against Leeds, 3 goals. The game yesterday against Middlesbrough, 3 goals. The game that they drew against West Brom, 2 goals. The game against Coventry a couple of weeks before that, of course, and previous to the game, Watford shut out Birmingham. At Coventry, they had the game there against the Sky Blues, 3 goals conceded there. So Watford are very unbalanced right now. And in this game against Middlesbrough, you saw that clearly. You saw the inability of this team to defend properly. But that comes from somewhere. It's not the personnel being shockingly bad, because I don't think it's a matter of defensive personnel. We'd love to have upgrades in defense. I think it's about discipline and your approach to the way you play your football in key moments of a game, whether it's game management. I've talked about this all season. I've talked about the need to avoid silly fouls and silly free kicks, something that Watford have not been able to get away from ever since Coventry, when, again, we saw this with silly free kicks being given up before halftime, and you're up 1-0 on the road, and you can't get into halftime up 1-0 because you've given away a silly free kick that leads to a goal, Sir Alter. And I can go on and on and on about silly mistakes that get made where they don't need to be made. and costing us goals. We saw this with Ngakia a few weeks ago as well. Now, look, Jeremy Ngakia didn't have the best start to the game yesterday against Middlesbrough, but I thought he grew into the game and actually improved and had a decent game. But most of the rest of the players didn't have anything close to a decent game. I thought Porteous was good. I liked the energy from Martins when he came off the bench. I also liked Bio. I thought Bio had an excellent game yesterday. He did score in this game. In fact, he was a really important factor in the game because he cut Watford's deficit from 2-0 to 2-1 and should have scored again about 5 minutes after that. He will miss a sitter and he will frustrate you, but Bio, one thing you can always respect and admire about Bio is his ability to work and get to positions on the pitch and work very hard for the team. He tracks back, he starts play, he starts breaks, he builds from the back. I've seen this in a couple of games now, and he is someone who is a relentless, tireless worker, and he's a team player. That's one thing about Bio. And there are Watford fans that don't like Bio, some of them, but the fact is that the man works really hard, and I'd rather have a man who works hard on the pitch for me and cares about the team and cares about the teammates and cares about getting the result and is a team player who may miss some sitters and may score once or twice here and there, but miss sitters, than a man who scored 15 goals but doesn't track back, 15 goals but doesn't help the team out, 15 goals and only cares about himself. I really would rather have Bio in there than that selfish player. I really would. So for me, Bio had an excellent game yesterday. He scored, cutting the deficit 2-1, and then Watford went into halftime down 2-1 and picked up the pace, much stronger second half, and they kept going, and they finally battered the door down, made it 2-2, goal from West Hood, really good bit of quality from him in the game to make it 2-2. And then from there, you would hope and you would expect as a Watford fan, your team to stabilize that game at 2-2 and then kick on. But Watford didn't do that. Again, they got caught out, and they got caught out way too easily throughout this game yesterday against the Middlesbrough side that, again, had a lot of intent and endeavor, looked really good going forward, looked dangerous going forward, but their defense is awful. Middlesbrough's defense is poor, and Watford had no excuse yesterday against a team who cannot defend a shop window. I mean, I'm serious, Middlesbrough are poor defensively. Watford just did not have an answer for Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough controlled the tempo. And even though Watford had more of the possession, it's about what you do with the possession. And Watford came close in the second half. Bio controlled the play in a really good moment right in front of the 6-yard box. He headed between two Middlesbrough defenders, kept the ball, kept the play alive, and just chipped the ball, and it just scraped past the crossbar, almost went in. I mean, Bio had one of his best games as a Watford player yesterday. And unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to get more than the one goal, but he got on the score sheet, had a really good all-around game. Rajovic, on the other hand, was poor. He was awful. Rajovic didn't do anything yesterday. Didn't see him getting involved. This is a 6'4" striker. You brought him here to get goals, yeah, but he didn't put himself about. He didn't put himself about at all. Use your height, use your frame. You're a 6-foot strapping lad. Put yourself about and intimidate the Middlesbrough defense that can't defend. That's my issue there with Rajovic yesterday. In fact, the last couple of games, he's really not had any impact. It's not just about service. It's not just about link-up play. It's also about assertiveness as a striker. And if you fail to assert yourself as a striker, you are going to be on the outside looking in. If you're not willing to put yourself about, you are going to have a long day at the office. One thing about Bio is he puts himself about. He makes himself useful. He runs into space. He makes himself available. He does put in the hard yards all the time. The man is a team player. And I think as a result of his really hard work yesterday, he is going to get another start. He'll start again because what Ishmael did yesterday, Val started out with either a 3-5-2 or a 4-4-2. And the formation is not the reason they lost this game. I do not want to hear that. You have had, and Val, I think, is trying to protect his players publicly here by saying it's on me. But the fact is that this is not about the change of formation. Oh, no, no, no. This is about players not being disciplined enough in key moments of games. And this pattern has stretched out now for these last few games. And it's also coincided with the disciplining of players off the pitch, which I'll get to in a moment. Val Ismail got here in May of 2023 as Watford head coach. He had all summer and he worked a number of weeks during the summer with these lads in a 7.5-week training camp. The players described it as really harsh, you know, and I'm just paraphrasing, described it as an intense experience. I'm sure during the course of that 7.5 weeks or thereabouts, Val changed formations, did all kinds of experimentations, and these players were drilled into the fundamentals of dealing with formation changes and adapting to them. Yes, game day is different. I get it. Match day is always going to be different. But these players are no strangers to changes in formation, not just at Watford, but wherever they've played previously in their footballing careers. So this idea that the formation change was a complete failure and these players, they just didn't really adapt, you know, they didn't adapt, or, you know, it's on me, is nonsense. I mean, I have to say that that's just nonsense. I think Val is protecting his players publicly. And I think Val knows he's got other issues in there that need to be dealt with that have really leaked out already. And that's discipline. It's discipline. Watford should have had the discipline and the commitment to go on and platform to a win in the game against Middlesbrough, or at least keep it at 2-2, which they failed to do. Now, Watford showed a lot of character. I cannot ignore this point that I'm about to make. Watford showed a lot of character yesterday, having been down 2-0 so quickly, as they did when they were down 2-1 so quickly against West Brom. They showed character to hold on to that game, to come back and get a 2-2 result, get a 2-2 draw. Watford showed a lot of character yesterday to come from 2-0 down and get to 2-2. But they did not show anything after that to platform off of 2-2 and push it to 3-2. They did not do that. In fact, it was the opposite. Middlesbrough took the bull by the horns, another foray in behind Watford's defense. Watford's defense was left open all day. The midfield was non-existent. Loser was terrible in this game. I didn't see anything from him. He does not, I think he doesn't care. And if these are the players, Loser and Ben Hamer, who you've got on your senior leadership committee as captain committee or whatever it is, you're in trouble. You are in trouble. This is not about Val Ismail. And of course, the owner, if the owner ever continued this nonsense of sacking managers, you know, we know who the problem is. It's not Val Ismail. This is about a group of players now who, some of whom are looking to make a change in the management. You've got Ben Hamer, who doesn't show up on time to a team meeting or a training, shows up late. He gets disciplined, rightly so, by Val. Previous to that, you had Imran Loser, who shows up late to some meetings or some trainings. On a couple of occasions, Val disciplines him. So this is what's going on. And this, I think, this behavior by these players, by some of the players, is now also seeping into the action on the pitch. It is a bad look for your football club when two of the players who are leadership committee players and veteran players who should know better are going about being late for meetings, being late for training. That sends a really poisonous message to the rest of the team. And it can become contagious, because if the younger players are looking up to you and you're a player as a senior or veteran player who's now showing up late to team meetings, showing up late to training, you are saying to those younger players that it is okay to not abide by the simple rules. It's a simple rule. Be on time. You're taught that. I was taught that as a 5-year-old. Be on time. Don't be late. Don't be late to these things. When you have these meetings, don't be late. That's not something that has anything to do with a change of formation on the pitch. If you change your formation, the players still have to do the same kinds of things in football that you would do. You just have to be committed toward wanting to do them. You have to be committed to do them. And I think what happened with Watford yesterday is that there was a lack of consistency in commitment. And where have we heard that before? Season previous to this one? Season previous to that one? There is a lack of commitment to doing the fundamental things. And when you have a team that is not committed to doing the fundamental things, you get results like this one. You get defensive mistakes. Now, mistakes happen in games, but you get a lack of care and commitment to defending as a team. It's not just the back four. It's a team effort. And so Watford fell in this game to Middlesbrough yesterday because of two things: Middlesbrough's desire to win the game and real purpose and intent going forward, and Watford's failure to commit to the basic fundamentals when it came down to it, when it came down to a strike partnership, where Bayer and Rajovic started together in the 4-4-2 or the 3-5-2, and there's acres of space between them. There's the Grand Canyon between them. As far as I'm concerned, they could have been on opposite ends of the Grand Canyon when they were playing yesterday. There was so much space between them. You have to narrow that gap. You have to narrow that. They should be playing really, in earnest, no more than 10 to 15 yards apart. They've got to get much closer. You can't have a striking relationship like that. And yes, they're competing for places and competing to start in the striker role, but competition's a good thing. It's not a poisonous thing. And if you're not a team player, though, it would be poisonous. But if you're a team player, you will embrace competition, and doing so, you'll embrace that competition in the name of and for the good of the team. It's really that simple. So for me, that's where the breakdowns were yesterday. The defense, we know, doesn't have the personnel, but you can have the lousiest personnel on the planet in defense in a football team. But if that lot are committed to being disciplined and steady and committed to defending, they will have a fair chance of coming out of there with at least a point, at least some kind of result. Watford did not commit to that yesterday. So I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done discipline-wise, and this is after a week of strong training. I just think that there's things going on with discipline that is now really causing a lot of problems at this first team. The first couple of games, you didn't see any evidence of this, and now all of a sudden, the last few games, you're seeing it. And I'm really concerned about it, because firing Val Ishmael, dare I even say that, because he should never be sacked here. Sacking Val Ishmael is not going to eliminate these issues of discipline. Sacking Val Ishmael is not going to stop someone like Imran Louza from showing up late to a training or a team meeting. Sacking Val Ishmael ain't going to stop Ben Hamer from deciding that he wants to show up late and show up late for a training or a team meeting. Those things are not going to stop with the sacking of a manager. What you need to do is get players out of here who don't want to be here. Ben Hamer's telling you he doesn't care when he shows up late, and he's the backup goalkeeper. And I get it. Yes, we should have a different goalkeeper to give Dan Backman some competition. But Ben Hamer's telling you he doesn't give a monkeys and he don't want to be here. So get rid of him. January comes, show him the door. Bring in a goalkeeper in here. I don't care if the goalkeeper is in League One. I don't care. If that goalkeeper is committed and has a good resume and has a good reputation and is a team player or is someone who actually does care, bring that person in here. See the back of Ben Hamer. He can go. And Louza can go as well. If Imran Louza can play as poorly as he did yesterday and has in the past, earlier this season, missed trainings or been late to them, at least been late to trainings, and he says in comments in the Watford Observer over the last few days or weeks that he's apologized and he realizes now that he can't do what he's doing. Well, wait a minute. You're a veteran footballer. When did you not realize that you couldn't show up late to team meetings? When was that something you realized? So again, if players are showing up late to meetings and showing up late to training, they don't care. They need to leave. I don't care who they are. No player is bigger than the fan base. No player is bigger than the club. And no player is bigger than the team. So for me, this particular 10-minute take, and I know it's probably gone a lot longer than 10 minutes now, but this particular 10-minute take is much more about Watford's mentality and approach. And that word mentality, often overused, including perhaps by me, but it's a word that's extremely important because discipline or a lack of discipline is about mentality. It's a component of what your mentality is as a professional. And if Ben Hamer and Imran Loser, or anyone else for that matter, cannot show up to training on time or show up to meetings on time, they're being unprofessional. If you can't be a professional with the wages you're getting, or even if you're not getting wages, if you can't be a professional and show up on time and respect your teammates and respect the manager, you got to go. Simple as. It's got nothing to do with formation changes. These players have never had a formation change to deal with in game in their lives. They've never had a start of a game where the formation's different. They didn't have 7 weeks of training in the summer, in the off season, when they were dealing with all this, in friendly matches, preseason matches, in trainings. So I think that Val Ishmael realizes there's some other things going on, and he's probably just covering for his players publicly. But internally, I suspect that there are some things going on, and it would be a shame if this owner meddled. And I hope that he doesn't, although we know what the track record's been on that front. Middlesbrough deserved the win because they went for the game and they made fewer mistakes than Watford did. And by the way, Middlesbrough should have scored at least another goal in this game. Second half, if Crooks had been more selfish and actually taken the shot, it would have been 4-2. It would have been a 4-2 finish easily. Now, Crooks, because he's a team player for Middlesbrough, passed the ball to his teammate who either lost the ball or it just was intercepted by Ryan Porteous. If Crooks had gone in on goal and taken that shot, that would have been the game done and dusted for Middlesbrough. So they were a team. They played unselfishly, and Watford didn't at times. There were some good efforts by Watford, don't get me wrong. They tried. Esprit, I thought, was very good in this game in the start. I thought he did well. And there are a few others, Martins, as I have alluded to. Bio had a very good game, excellent game, worked really hard as he always does. And there was one or two others who I think played decently. Tom Deli Bashiru was not one of them. I think he was on the pitch way too long. The subs, I think, again, Georgie, for me, did not really impact the game. Jamal Lewis started the game, was very good, I thought, quiet and very good and steady. But Sierralta, for me, needs to be readjusted into that final back four. They tried a 3-5-2, I guess. It didn't work, but I think he needs to be alongside Porteous in that back line, and Hood can come off the bench at that or play in a different position, But I'm not really a fan of Sierralta in that central defensive midfield. He may anchor it sometimes pretty well, but I didn't think that he had a big impact in this game. And, he did make a block, but that was a big impact. But generally speaking, I'm not really a big fan of having Sierralta sitting as a 6. Make Loser a 6, At least he gives you an anchor. I don't think Loser's had a good season, despite the fact he has scored once or twice and definitely had a really good start to the season. He's gone off the boil. Rajovic has gone off the boil. James Morris is nowhere. He wasn't even in the squad yesterday, and I'm sure from what I know, he's not injured. I don't think he is. So James Morris is out of there. Is there discipline with him? Who knows? And Reece Healy, a bright spot, he came back, a little earlier than I expected on the last day of September, and made a brief impact. Didn't really have a lot to do because it was right near the end of the game. I hope to see more of Reece Healy coming up in these big games they've got coming up now. Watford, Wednesday at Sunderland, and then Saturday at Cardiff in South Wales. So listen, it's a bit longer, a 10-minute take, but I really want to talk about those issues. And Watford yesterday succumbed to themselves as much as they did to Middlesbrough, taking no credit for Middlesbrough. They deserved the win. Middlesbrough now have been unbeaten in the last 3 or 4 games. They had a great week, Middlesbrough, and did what they had to do to get 3 points. But what stings you as a Watford supporter is that Middlesbrough can't defend to save their lives, and yet they still come out of the Vicarage Road, come out of the Vic with this 3-2 victory. And Watford now are going to have to really decide what kind of team they want to be, because I thought the identity was building at this club. I thought, at least on the first team, the men's first team, that the identity was building. Val definitely is building an identity, but are these players all buying into it? I think some of them are, and some of them, well, I guess they couldn't care less. This has been the YouOrns 10-minute take.